So yesterday I talked about the three universal characteristics. The three universal characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Those things doesn't come just like that. Although yesterday I mentioned that the conventional understanding of anicca, dukkha, or anatta is all for us very surface. And we said that the weather change, anicca. We said that you are getting old, dukkha. All these are very conventional, very surface. But the true anicca that I'm mentioning is that it comes with seeing the process of arising and passing away moment after moment, non-stop. These characteristics, as the way that you use the word universal, because whether the mind or the body will show the same characteristics whenever the mind is clear, thorough, and penetrative. And it doesn't come if you are just a beginner. You need to develop them. And to develop them, sometimes it takes some. It all depends on yogis. I've seen yogis in a short time, they could do it. Some yogis, well, it have to take years just to see something like that. But nevertheless, still able to develop. The type of dukkha, the type of anicca that arises and passing away again and again, this type of anicca is a very deep level of anicca. But the anicca doesn't give rise only to one aspect. It can able to show you in different aspects of anicca. It shows you the ending of a destruction of a phenomenon. So there are different perspectives of anicca. There are different perspectives of dukkha also. The dukkha is not just your pain here, pain there, headache here, sickness there. Yes, those are dukkha. But these are not the deep aspect of the dukkha. The deep aspect of the dukkha, it comes together with the arising and passing away moment after moment. When you see this arising and passing away moment after moment in many perspectives, sometimes the fear arises about the mind and body. Sometimes the instability. Sometimes you feel very nauseatic about the mind and body. You feel like you want to give up in this meditation, because when the truth hits you, it's going to hit you very strongly. The thing that you thought that just rising and falling, right now you are taking up, is so easy, But when it comes in a deeper level, and it shows you the arising and passing away, sometimes your tears also come out. Because it is very impactful, not on the body, but it's actually on the mind. Feel very severe on the mind. But if your attachment to the everyday pleasantness, nice things, and so on, you need to see this dukkha for a longer period of time. But when you see this in different perspective and the mind gets more maturity, then the deeper aspect of anatta arises. When you begin to see everything that you do is not within a control. When I say it's not within a control, even you blink an eye, even you want to move a finger, even if you breathe the rising and falling, each and every rising and falling, or each and every movement of a rising and falling, it is known already by the mind before that rising takes place, for example. If the rising is going to go sideways, the mind already know it first. If there is going to go tight, the mind already know it first before the tightness arises. If you're lifting, pushing, dropping, if your leg is going to vibrate in the pushing time, the mind already knows it. And each and every vibration, the mind actually knows it. So during this time, when you see all these things, the concept of I am in the one in control. There's none at all. There's none. So in many perspectives, the non-self, it will shows you. It will shows you from the cause and effect. It will shows you from the nama, rupa, where you can able to distinguish it. So from a perspective, so a number of perspectives that it will shows you this way. The reason that it will shows you this way in all of us, because that you have to overcome the opposite nature. Because our attachment to something eternal, something forever, is very strong in us. You think your love is going to be forever, you think you're going to be soulmate forever, you think you're going to have this forever, that forever. Well, that is where the attachment of the view of everlasting. Sometimes a certain God everlasting, a certain Almighty everlasting, a certain universal consciousness is everlasting. Even sometimes for some of you, your chi also is everlasting. Sometimes you don't understand this practice of how these things binds up in our mind. But that one we'll talk about some other time. So in the dukkha, it opposes the pleasantness. If you're very attached to life, if you are very attached to all the nice things, pleasant feelings, and you love these pleasant feelings, then when it comes to dukkha, you got to see it for a longer period of time before you can able to undo this pleasantness, this attachment to the pleasantness. If your view of an I that is controlled, you don't understand what is cause and effect, then again the whole nature of non-self is going to be longer, because the non-self needs to overcome the aspect of a self, of an I. That is very difficult to see. But the vipassana, as you practice, all these things, it will open up to you. With that only, then the maturity of the mind takes place, then the realization of Nibbana will occur. When the mind is ready for Nibbana, to see the true nature of Nibbana, at the same time it eradicates certain defilements, at the same time it will bring the samsara to a stop. You will bring the samsara to a stop. It's not that it cannot be achieved. It's only whether how much effort you want to put into it. How much time you want to put into it. So basically, yesterday's talk is something like this. To give you an understanding of how the development of the progress of vipassana take place in a more general manner. Sometimes I talk about in more detailed manner. Sometimes I talk about all this development of insight in more detailed manner. But perhaps this time is not the time yet. So yesterday I mentioned that tonight is going to be an easier talk. Easier talk, but very difficult to do. I need to go and touch upon these hindrances. So tonight, the next night, or maybe the following night, we're going to look into some of the hindrances and how we're going to transform the hindrances into a meditation object and able to derive insight from all these hindrances. We are taught that there are 5 hindrances. What are the 5 hindrances? You tell me, what's the number 1? Sensual desire. What's number 2? Ill will. Number 3. Dinamida. What is dinamida? Sloth and torpor. If those people don't understand what is sloth and torpor, it's just sleepiness, drowsiness, laziness of the mind. Yeah? Then what's the 4th one? Restlessness and worry. Uddhacca and kukucca. And what's the 5th one? Skeptical doubt. Vicikicca. So there are 5 hindrances. In Abhidhamma, there are number 6. Wrong view. But let's number 5 will do. Wrong view, we can always look at it from another perspective, from another time. And sometimes the wrong view, it can be very horrible. Sometimes you may have it, you don't even realize that you may have it. But nevertheless, don't worry about it for now. We talk about the 5 hindrances. Now, mastery of this meditation. Many times in my talks, I said a yogi must learn to master. Mastery, as I said, first day you must learn to your walking, sitting, daily activities. These 3 you must learn to master them, and you repeat them every day until you try again, trial and error, until you get it right. After several retreats also, you find that more or less you can get it, but sometimes you need a certain refinement into it. The refinement, we can talk about it another time also. It's also another big topic, just to understand how to refine a technique. So that one we put aside. But what is important here is that overall, as a yogi, you need to master, firstly, the development aspect. The development aspect here, it comes with your walking, sitting, daily activities. You use the walking, for example, to develop the mindfulness, to develop the concentration, to develop the effort, to develop a lot of all the great qualities of the mind. You need to develop that. And therefore, you need to master these skills. Okay? Now, the second skill to master is overcoming the hindrances. The hindrances, each and every of the hindrances, they are different, they have a different characteristic. And different characteristic, you need to deal with them differently. You cannot apply one way of doing to the next one. Because if you know how to deal with that, a certain characteristic, you can't deal with the next one using the same technique. Sometimes it completely on the opposite side. So it is good that we also must learn to master all these different states of our defilements, of these hindrances as they arise. So this one is a big topic. In this retreat, I'm not going to talk all the hindrances, but I'm going to give you a general idea. I'm going to look into especially the restlessness and the sleepiness, and how we're going to transform them into a meditation object, rather than just sleeping there. Or rather just thinking and you cannot do anything about it. So we're not going to, we cannot let our little time that we have and just being wrecked by all these hindrances. So we got to transform the hindrances into a meditation practice, into a meditation object. So this is a second part that we're going to talk about in the next 2 or 3 days. The third aspect, which is also a big aspect of it, is the balancing of the faculty. The balancing here means you have to refine your state of your practice. That means as you develop into your practice, your mind becomes stronger, clearer, sharper, more penetrative. All the concentration, it all starts coming in. But if it starts coming in and it doesn't know how to be able to balance, you're going to end up with a lot of tension. You're going to end up with a lot of pressure. And this type of pressure, tension, migraine or whatsoever, it can last for a long period of time. And because of the attitude, you do not know how to change it. Every time you come back to the retreat again, you are not affected by all the hindrances, but you kind of like hitting a wall. You meditate. After that, everything goes blank. Or meditate. Every time the tension arises, you just can't go any more further. And as I said again, these things I've seen in yogis in my past teachings. Not to say all, but once in a while. Once in a while means this yogi has practicing for the past 20 years or 10 years. And they just cannot go through. Because refinement of the whole practice is a big topic itself. Although the Buddha says 5 faculties, that some of you may heard the talk on faculties and so on. But when you actually applied it in our practice and how to able to balance one after another, those things take skills, trial and error. Until you get it right. And you thought that you get it right, it will test you another way. And you have to be vigilant, careful, and you have to try it again and again. So this is again a very big topic that a yogi needs to master. A yogi needs to master these 3 of them. So let's go back to the hindrances. First day you come, you thought that you are clear, you meditate. Second day, what do you get? Sleepy. Third day, what do you get? Same also. So sometimes you need to sleep for 3 days. You thought that the first day maybe clear because you come in a bit fresh. Then at night, and then you cannot sleep, change of a different place and so on. Then a lot of sleepiness. For the next 2 or 3 days. So the first day you come, second day, third day, all gone. Yeah? Let's say it gets better. The sleepiness gets better. Then after the 4th day, 5th day, what do you think you'll get? Then start thinking. Start thinking, start planning, start this one and so on. You are not able to meditate yet. So usually for a yogi, first 5 days, 4-5 days, nothing much. Maybe if you are more seasoned yogi, then these first 2 or 3 days the first 2 or 3 days gets, you are more able to adjust faster. But for a new yogi sometimes, or not just new, that you have not been practicing for the past don't know how many years, everything become karat already, Everything, you're not oiled anymore. Your meditation is not oiled. Everything become rusty. Then also you need the next 5 days. So next time, please don't come for 3 days retreat, 3 days retreat now, your experience was just sleepy only. Go back, what do you get? Meditation sleepy only, what did you get? So, 3 days experience, usually I don't take. Then, after 5 or 6 days or 7 days, then if you come for 1 week, let's say, for the 4 or 5 days, you need to settle down. Perhaps on the 6th day, you want to meditate. But the 6th day, you're thinking about the 7th day. You want to go back. How are you going to meditate? This is exactly for most people when it comes for 1 week. As I said, for a new beginner, sometimes in other places, I put a criteria that you have to come for 10 days. The reason you come for 10 days on a practical sense, because you pass through the 3 or 4 days, or 4 or 5 days, then at least you got 3 or 4 days to meditate before you think of going back. That 3 or 4 days is going to make a difference in you. Because if you follow the instruction, if you follow the technique and development, then you see some degree of progress. That progress will give you the confidence. The confidence will bring you the next retreat to come in. We don't have to go and tell you, hey, this retreat nobody lah, come lah, fill up the place lah, no need. You will know how to come back because the confidence, you see some degree of progress is there. If the first retreat, you don't break something, you don't go through it, you don't break something, or you don't see what is, then you notice. Then the second retreat, now your confidence, maybe sometimes people ask you to go again, maybe you go, but you don't have that initiative on your own. Yeah? So first retreat, at least you go for 10 days. So try. You see, sometimes we ignorantly, never mind lah. Go 1 day also good lah. 2 days also good lah. Better than nothing lah. Yes lah, of course lah. Better than when you are at home lah, doing all kinds of stupid things. At least you come here and sleep. Also, is better than nothing. Yeah. So it's a good rest also. It's not. But you may not see some progress yet. But if a person have more time, of course you ask them at least to give a 10 days try. Yeah. And this one is because the first few days you need to overcome the strong hindrance, all the strong hindrances. And the technique for tonight and the tomorrow night, that I'm going to go through some of it, is that this technique, you cannot apply it when you're in the first day, or second day, or third day. First few days, it's all about development. You develop the mindfulness. After 5 or 6 days, naturally, the sleepiness become less. But it doesn't mean that it disappears. It comes here, 1 or 2 sitting, kacau you a little bit, disturb you a little bit. Thinking comes in, disturb you a little bit. That time, after a number of 4 or 5 or 6 days, when a certain degree of mindfulness has developed, then this time we can transform the hindrances into a meditation object. Most of the time, when you come into say a Friday class or a Monday class, the technique is that when you come with a hindrance, let's say you walk, lifting, pushing, dropping, you got thinking, what do you do? Thinking, let it go, and come back again. You got rising, falling, thinking, let it go, the thinking, come back again, rising and falling. Not to say you are wrong, because these are basic instruction. And you do that, it's good for you, because you cannot handle the hindrance yet. If you can go into the handle the hindrances, you're going to end up with more hindrances. You think sleepy, you can note the sleepy. For the first day, for the second day, you're going to end up with more sleepiness. So you cannot do that yet. It's not the time for you to do that yet. But after 5 or 6 days or 7 days or so, like here, right now, how many days you are in? 10 days already. This time perhaps you are more, the mindfulness is more stronger. So now we must learn to take up the sleepiness, the thinking, so that we can able to see them much more clearer. Yeah? Alright. Tonight we take one first. You want restlessness or you want sleepiness? More say restless. Okay, we'll talk about restless. We'll look into restless mind and the worry mind. Now, this restless mind and worry mind, these are a very, very strong problem for many, many yogis. Now look at your lifestyle. Look at the way of your life. Most of you are like intellectual labor. They pay you not because you have your muscle, and they pay you because of your mind, right? They pay you because of that. And what do they want from you? They want you to solve problems. They want you to get things done. They want you to do this, do that. Therefore, you need to think and think and think and think and think and think. The whole day that you go through, you got to sit in front of a computer. You got to type. You got to solve problem. You got to do some planning again, and all these things never end. Right? It never ends. It ends. You cannot cari makan. You ends. You got no job. Because it never ends. It will keep going and going and going. And when it says keep going, this is This is where we begin by our early age of our training in life. You are taught to think. Or maybe you taught to think later. It doesn't matter. But anyway, when you come into working life, let's say if just from the working life until you retire, how many years? Yeah, some of you are not retired yet, you got still way to go. So those who are retired, you see, maybe you start off from 25, you come up from your college, you come up from university, then until 60 or 65 years old. How many years you have to keep thinking? And you think that when you come to meditation, everything want to calm down. No, your habit is so strong in all of us. So strong in all of us. It's so habitual in our life. So every time for most of us, when we begin to meditate, there will be a lot of thinking. And this is because of the hindrances. We cultivate them unknowingly, again and again. The problem with this restless mind, and sometimes if we cannot stop the thinking goes on and on and on and on. Even after work, you cannot let it go. Sort of like going on and on and on and on. The next day, on and on. One of these days, you're going to break. One of these days, you're going to snap. Sometimes people come with depression. Sometimes come with too much pressure, headache, migraine, and so on. Because of too much thinking. Become restless. So, it is part of our lifestyle. It's part of our lifestyle. The problem is that thinking it is because they are doing it again and again. We do not know how to put it down. We do not know how to stop it. Because the mind keep going and going. Why does it keep going and going? Why does the thinking keep going and going and going and going? One of the biggest factor that your mind keep going, thinking, planning, speculating, analyzing, judging, and so on. And all these different words that I could use, a lot of it inside there, you find a lot of satisfaction of the thinking. Satisfaction because that when you think of an opinion, you feel that your opinion is wonderful. Your opinion is good. Wow, I can able to plan this, structure this very clearly. You feel good. That feeling good itself, it will prompt more thinking to come in. You thought that you can able to plan out certain things, you can able to understand something. Because sometimes, like for example, like when we do maths, those days when we are in school, I was quite bad at maths. Then you think here, think there, think no road. Every time like can hit everywhere. Especially like at maths, like all the calculus and differentiation. Those things are like, wow. It was very difficult for me at one time. But out of training again and again, then you begin to understand the ways how to do it. Then you feel good about it. You feel very good about it that you can able to understand how to solve certain problem. That understanding itself, because you felt the satisfaction is there, then you keep on thinking. And you keep on thinking. You keep on solving. You keep on wanting to solve. You feel that it's a challenge for you to solve. And then you thought that your work, your life becomes a challenge. Then you want to face it. Face it in how? Because you find that a lot of satisfaction in thinking about it. That satisfaction, that desire, that craving for it, it perpetuates. It keeps going and going and going, and parts of the whole habit in all of us. Ask you to stop the thinking, you just can't. Because the mind has to keep going. because it's already the mind, that the mind is have the force to keep it going and going and going. So every time when you come to a retreat, this is what will happen to all of us. The thinking mind, the restless mind, is very strong in all of us. So this is one of the very big problem for a lot of yogis. In fact, that sometimes when I go to overseas, especially European or North America, sometimes I actually feel like I'm more of a counselor than a meditation teacher, a psychologist, just to help them to settle the mind off, just to help them to clear all the mind before we are talking about meditation. In Asia, not so much. Although they are thinking there are some, but not like 70% of a yogi. Sometimes 70% of the yogi over there, sometimes you have to deal every time is with thinking. They come in the next interview, before they finish paying respect, you know what's their problem already. Thinking again. Restless mind again. So much so, it takes sometimes for them 1 week, 10 days, or even the whole 2 weeks of 10 days retreat. It just can't settle down. They need a few retreats before the mind learn how to calm down. At least for a while, for a window period that the mindfulness can able to arise. So it is a big problem. It is a big problem. But the Buddha gave us so many methods, so many ways to how to overcome this thinking, this planning, this restless mind. Many times, as I said during in this retreat, as I said that the first few days I said, hey, you don't go into the story. When you go into the story, any content of your thinking, it will go more and more and more. Any story, whether it is your own thinking, your own judgment, or even in the thinking itself, you see your parents, your past parents, your already pass away, or you're planning about the future, what you're going to do. You see your grandchildren, you see this and you see that, you see your work and so on. As I said again and again, don't go into the story. If you go into the story, you are out of the whole mindfulness thing. But nevertheless, you will still go into the story. What is important is that you learn how to come out from the story. And when you learn how to come out, the mind becomes alert and clear. You kind of like awaken for a while, Many times when you get caught into all the storyline and stream and all that, suddenly you come back again. Wow, how long I really have gone? That coming back is again what we call another characteristic of mindfulness. Non-forgetfulness. Non-forgetfulness of our meditation object. While we are in there, you begin to forget all the meditation object. The Pali word is appamada. Appamada, non-forgetfulness or non-hitlessness. Non-hitlessness. Appamada is hitless or forgetful. Not forgetful about memory, but forgetful about your meditation object. So, many times in your sitting, in your walking, in your daily activities, your job is to keep pulling it back again. Keep pulling back again and again and again. And you've got to make an effort for it, especially if you begin to meditate. You begin to meditate, you're going to need to make an effort to come back and come back and come back. If you stay inside there, you know that it's going to go more and more and more and more and more for you. Sometimes the whole hour. Sometimes even it doesn't finish the hour, it continue to the walking. Not finished in the walking, it continue to the sitting back again. So sometimes it grips the mind and you just cannot do anything. This is what we call the restless mind. But if you learn how to get out from it, when a yogi become more seasoned yogi, when you develop further, not that they don't have thinking, they still have. It's just that the duration of the thinking becomes shorter. The duration becomes shorter. Shorter, that means that they have more time for more condition for the mindfulness to arise. While we are practicing, a lot of times the thought is so long. But as the meditation gets better and better, the time of the long thinking becomes less. The thinking is still there, you fall into it, but much faster you get out of it. Why is it that you can come out of it much faster? Because the habit that you have done in the walking, in the sitting, walking, sitting, because you keep the awareness there in the present moment, therefore, when it comes to the thinking, the mind starts to jump out from the content, from the story. You will automatically learn how to come out from it. But it takes a lot of practice before you're able to do this. So a lot of times when you practice, you'll find that the time of the thinking becomes shorter. Say, for example, like when you are in the walking and you're in the sitting. In the first few days, you know that your sitting is not very clear. Sleepiness, drowsiness, and so on. But your walking is so much more clearer. Thinking, not so much, less compared to the sitting. We understand that. That is why the first few days, development of the mindfulness is crucial. You know that in a sitting, you cannot develop much of mindfulness or anything. So forget about it. First 3 or 4 days, pay attention to your walking properly. Do your daily activities properly. Once the mindfulness begins to come in, the continuity becomes to come in. When it goes into the sitting, then only your rising, falling, sitting, touching, pain becomes much more clearer and manageable. So it takes a number of days. So that's why the first few days, if you start off with the wrong strategy, then after 7 days also, mindfulness also nothing much. Clarity of the mind, nothing much. So next time if you go into another retreat, first few days, always remember, walking is very important compared to the sitting. After 5 or 6 days, then the walking and the sitting become important. Both of them are crucial really. So, the restless mind again. So don't go into the content, come out of it again and again. If you're able to do that, well and good. Wonderful. This thinking mind, it affects a lot of us. And we need to able to overcome it also. Now before we go into overcoming the restless mind, here I need to again to differentiate 2 things. What is a restless mind and what is a normal thinking mind? There are 2 different things. One is with hindrances, which is a defilement, and one is without defilement. Okay? Or, of course, if you're still a Putujana, it may come with defilements. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that even the Buddha can think, but he doesn't have restless mind. An Arahant can think, but he doesn't have a restless mind. This is 2 different things. A restless mind means that its character is that it keep going and 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 going. And you're kind of like nonsense inside there. If the mind, the thinking mind, is a very specific story, sometimes it goes into a very specific story, then the worry starts coming out. And keep on going. The same story, it keep recycling, You keep recycling the same story again and again and again. And you feel very difficult. That is more like worry and regrets and so on. Towards that a particular thing. Sometimes the restlessness comes in, or most of the time that you could see, it's all very random thoughts. Random thoughts, not connected to here and there, even like 20 years, you also can able to remember very clearly. Yeah? But sometimes that memory, it triggers off into a very specific thought and you keep on recycling into it. That you got to be careful also. So here, we are trying to deal with the restless mind. The restless mind is where it becomes uncontrollable. Thinking mind, if it's a normal thinking mind, you're aware of it, that you know that you are thinking, you're aware of it, it kind of like disappear. Then you can able to go on again. This is what we call a thinking mind, a normal thinking mind, which you cannot stop it. It's part of the whole process of vipassana meditation. Some people, when they thought that meditation, they must have zero thinking. Zero. That means from the start of the sitting and the end of the sitting, must not be one thinking mind comes in. If one thinking mind come in, it will disturb me. It will blemish my perfect sitting. If you have that thought, then you're not going to achieve it. You try to achieve some perfection, which is, again here, as I said, we are not here to trying to be perfect. We are trying to see the imperfection of this mind and body. Other words, the thoughts that arises, you're aware of it also. When you're aware of it, you kind of go off. So a lot of times, then when you have those thinking, sometimes when you sit down there, you're rising, falling, you note for a while, the thought already disappeared. That one is not restless mind yet. You note for a while, gone. But if you note again, and you repeat, and you carry on, you note, still carry on. That one is what we call the restless mind. Understand the two? Understand the difference here? Only when you meditate, you see a bigger difference. If you don't meditate, you listen and nice talk lah. But next time when you go to meditate, you end up the same problem again. So here, you must, these things is experiential knowledge. So you know that a normal thinking, you pay attention to it, and sort of like it goes off. A lot of times, you notice that. A lot of times, you notice the thinking, it cannot go off. It keep going and going and going. That one is a restless mind. This one is where we need to deal with it, this restless mind. So when we are clear in these two, then we begin to learn to overcome them. But if to overcome them, there are also, you must have a certain technique to overcome them. You cannot overcome them just any way you like. If you overcome them wrongly, it will backfire and the thinking will even become more. Or even at a certain other time, sleepiness, you're going to backfire if you do it wrongly. Or in the skeptical doubt will backfire again. So don't underestimate these hindrances. It kind of boomerang back if you do not know how to throw it properly. So now be able to differentiate. So now we go into how to able to deal with this restless mind, all this non-stop thinking. Oh yeah, before I forget. The restless mind is conditioned by the thinking mind. Again, it's conditioned by the thinking mind. If your thinking mind, let's say, if a normal thinking mind, you repeat a bit, it disappears. It goes a little bit, it disappears. But if you don't take care of that one, it keep on going a little bit more, a few more times, then it end up in a lot of thinking. And then it end up non-stop. It end up into a restless mind. So therefore, even that little bit thinking coming in, you also need to be somewhat aware of it. If you're able to have some degree of awareness of it, it kind of like goes off. Then well and good. You can continue with your other objects. So don't underestimate that little thinking, because this little thinking is conditioned for the restlessness to come in. Although they are two different things, but it can condition for it to come. So with that understanding, we begin to how to deal with this restless mind. Now, say for example, you do the sitting or you do the walking this time. And then somehow or another, a lot of thinking is just keep going. A lot of thinking. Somehow or another, You try a day, and here we are talking about the yogis already spend like 5 days, 1 week, and so on, Then they have some degree of mindfulness arising from their practice, from the past few days. So this is maybe like 7 day, 8 day, and then you may have some degree of thinking a lot. You have a lot of thinking and you keep going, all this restlessness. So, what do you do with it? What are you going to do with it? This time, as I said, we need to transform the restless mind into a meditation object. Because it is a prominent object right now. It is a clear object, although it's a mental object, but it's a clear object. So, whenever it's a clear object, your attention has to bring it over there. You have to learn to pay attention to the restless mind right now. So, the first thing that you have to know it's a restless mind is that you have to acknowledge that this is a restless mind. You begin to clearly acknowledge it. This is a restless mind. A restless mind arises. This is the first thing. If you cannot acknowledge it, and when I say acknowledging it, that means that there's a little mindfulness, a little awareness that you know that is already there. If you really do not know, then your mind is still in a lot of in the story, in the content. Sometimes even in the story, in the content, you come out from it. You know that you are thinking, but the thinking hasn't stopped yet. You still keep on going, and keep on going. This time, you got to pay attention to that particular type of thoughts, the stream of thoughts. So in this time, you acknowledge it that it is there. If you don't acknowledge it, then of course there's no mindfulness at all. So at least on the beginning level, you're aware that it's already there. Okay, so this is the first thing, acknowledgement of it. The second thing is that you have to know it that this is a restless mind. Other words, you notice the first thing, you notice that it arises. Second thing, you know that this is restless. And this is not sleepiness. Because sometimes people mix up the wrong defilement or the wrong hindrance. If you notice this as a restless mind, you acknowledge it as a restless mind, or for some of you, you label it as a restless mind that arises. Because if you are not so familiar with the characteristics yet, let's say if you're a beginner and you want to try noticing, if you're not familiar with the characteristics, therefore you got to put the labeling there. You put the labeling there. Restless, or thinking, or planning, or memory. You're not doing anything much yet. We are talking about just putting a label here. Okay? Putting a label here. So, this first and second process is a very... the mindfulness is not strong. If your mindfulness is strong, you do not have restless mind. But now, because the mindfulness is not continuous, it's sporadic, but somehow or another you can able to catch that restless mind. Well and good. At least you begin on the first few steps, 1 or 2 steps. The next thing that you need, which a lot of times we don't have, you need to learn to accept them as they are. If you don't accept them as part of the whole meditation process, you will regard this restless mind as, first of all, you will say it as disturbance, kacau ni. And if you regard that as disturbance, That means you're not seeing it as it is already. You think that this something is already disturb you. In Vipassana, there's no such thing as disturbance, Everything can be noted. You regard it as disturbance because you don't like it to be there. Although you're aware that it is already there, you know that the mindfulness aware of it there, but you don't like it to be there. Because why? It disturbed my rising and falling. Why? Because it disturbed my lifting, pushing, dropping. I want to go back to my lifting, pushing, dropping, but this one come and disturb me again and again. How am I going to meditate like that? That's why, because of that, exactly that attitude, you're not accepting the nature as it comes up. Huh? So, this aspect is a very challenging aspect, because when I talk in the other hindrances also, you're going to see that a lot of all these hindrances you're not accepting it. All you want to wish is to make it go away. But wishing it to go away, you wish it with unhappiness behind it. When there's unhappiness behind it, there is aversion towards it. Aversion. That means you try to overcome a hindrance with another hindrance. You try to overcome a defilement with another defilement. Every time it arises, every time the thinking mind arises, you kind of like, how come it's still disturbing me? How come it's still, how am I going to report tomorrow? You're so afraid of reporting. So, here, a lot of times, because these things, although I say you accept right now, but tomorrow again, because it's going to come again and again. It's going to come again and again. So your acceptance of it must be wide, open enough. This is part of the whole characteristic of mindfulness. On the first day, I tell you, one of the characteristics of mindfulness is acceptance, not judging it, not judging it, not thinking that this is bad or this is good, but seeing it as it is. Just put it there. This is the quality of mindfulness. So if the defilement arises, if you cannot able to accept it, that means towards the defilement, towards the restless mind, there's no mindfulness. And there's no mindfulness is taken over by unwholesomeness, by your aversion, by your dislike, by your anger towards it. So if you have those things, you're going to fail if the defilement is there. So therefore, you must change your attitude. You must change your way of noting. If you don't change, it will be a big stumbling block. That's why it's called a hindrance. Because it can become a hindrance for your progress. So now you must learn to accept it. You must learn to see it as it is. Don't regard it as your disturbance. Now, if you're able to accept it, then only then we can able to overcome it in the right manner, in a more wholesome manner. And the manner of overcoming it, there's multiple ways. Skillful, wholesome manner, not unskillful, unwholesome manner. So there are a number of ways we can able to deal with it. There are the ways of vipassana. And the ways of vipassana, there's a number of ways we can do it. And there are ways of non-vipassana. You may bring in samatha aspect also. And also, it may not be samatha aspect, non-vipassana can be our daily aspect of our life. That too, also we have to bring it all in. Yeah. So sometimes we have to bring all these things in together in order not just to overcome it, but to prevent it from arising. Not to just to overcome it, but prevent it from arising in too much in the future. But it will still come. It will still come. But you have the chances it become less. So here we are going into overcoming it. Now, in all the phenomena that you pay attention to, rising, falling, sitting, touching, pain, and so on, those objects, you do not try to see how it ends and so on. You do not try to see how it ends. It will show the ending for you, it will show the ending for you. But a lot of times, as I said, in the talk on the unpleasant feelings, a lot of times yogi want the pain to end because they cannot withstand the pain. But as I said, if you have this attitude, your expectation and your desire is already behind it. So this is one thing. But when you come to a hindrance, finally your noting is to bring about the ending of the hindrance. You cannot let the hindrance keep going and going and going. This is the only thing of all your vipassana thing that you have to bring it to an end for at least for a period of time. If you cannot bring it to an end, you're going to have a problem of further development. But when you want to bring it to an end, you must do it in the right way. You must do it in the proper way. Then only the ending will come in. At the same time, mindfulness increases. At the same time, insight also increases. So how are we going to do it? The first way, the way of vipassana, then the way of vipassana is always we go face to face with it, just like all your objects. And now, because it's a prominent object, the first thing is that we bring attention to notice the restless mind. You notice the restless mind. When you pay attention to the restless mind, then here, as I said, don't go into the story. You go into the story, you're out. Okay? When you're out of the story, then it's good. You acknowledge it, you accept it, you don't wish it to go away. But now you're taking it as an object. Well, what are you going to do? Pay attention to it, then see its story one after another it passes. You still know the story, not that you do not know, but you are not in the story, that's all. Yeah. So you can able to see somewhat like you step back. Kind of like you step back for a while to take note of the thoughts go passing. This is how you begin to see how the restless mind changes. Or sometimes the restless mind can be go a bit more faster. The changes go, but the story can be very random. It go one after another. Or sometimes it goes a little bit slower. Change one story, it change one story, it change one story. Sometimes it's like very random change. Sometimes it go faster, sometimes it go slower. If you pay attention to that, you begin to see into the deeper characteristics of the restless mind. And yet at the same time, you are not affected by it. So this is one way of paying attention to it. Sometimes this restless mind, this thinking mind also, it may connect with desire. It may connect with desire. So if so happen the desire is there, you not desire. Well and good. If sometimes it just random, it's just neutral, just not thinking, or restless. Or sometimes it may just be a lot of planning about the future. Planning. Yeah. But you see how it changed. Not a lot of times for us, we just thinking come, we just not thinking, but we don't see its process. We just labeling one side, thinking one side, but they cannot connect. You are just one side, but you're not putting the whole show together. Here, you've got to put the whole labeling and see the process together. See how the changes like. one after another. That is how we begin to become more thorough in our noting, precision of noticing. Then you notice whether sometimes it comes with anger, sometimes it comes with desire, sometimes it's just plain neutral thinking. Sometimes this thinking, it can create a bit of tension in the head, in the forehead, in the then also you'll learn to accept it as it is. To see it as it is. So this is, now you pay attention to it, you begin to see how it changes. The next thing about paying attention to it also is that when you pay attention to it, the next skill is that this time you learn to slow down the noting. You slow down the tempo of the noting. Meaning that when the thoughts are fast, it's changing very fast. You kind of like move one after another. But when you pay attention to it, you note it as planning. Although the story is fast, but you note it as planning, or memory. And yet at the same time, you see how it changes. Why do we need to slow down? We need to slow down is because we need to bring about the tranquility. Passaddhi, we need to bring some calmness into the noting. The mind currently is because it's too active. It is too active, therefore there's a lot of thinking mind just keep on processing. The mind has not much of a tranquility right now. So here, when you slow down the noting, or you slow down your labeling at this juncture, just note it at a slower tempo, you bring about this one. But if you see how it changes, what happened to the process, that is where mindfulness and wisdom also comes in. So we are kind of like tuning the noting a bit. You got to tune the noting a little bit in order for the whole mind to settle down. Now, this method, paying attention to it, seeing what is going on, in the beginning part, first few days is impossible for you to do because you'll be overwhelmed by the thoughts. But after that, later, you got to learn to try it. See how it processes, because now you see the changes. Because the mindfulness and the wholesome mind starts to come in, it begins to take over the unwholesome mind. It begins to take over the hindrances. Therefore, the hindrances become weaker, and it just disappear. And disappear, other words, the mindfulness just continue from the restless mind into the next object, maybe the rising, falling, and so on. So you begin to see the whole process much more clearer. And you know how to see this process clearer, the confidence to deal with it also becomes stronger. That any of these hindrances coming in, you can deal with it much more gentle, clearer, and with mindfulness, not with suppression, not with thinking of it as disturbance. But you see the whole process at the end, it also disappears. But this way, you deal with it with wholesome, skillful mental states. If you want to suppress it, thinking of it as disturbance, you already deal with it with unwholesome, skillful mental states. You see what I mean right now? The paying attention, he has got his own skill. Before we go, just look into another aspect of it. Now, sometimes you may not want to see the object directly. This is also another way of vipassana technique, is that you're aware of it, you're aware of the thinking mind, planning, thinking slowly. But after that, you bring your attention, say, to the rising, falling, or the in-breath, out-breath. It goes to the in-breath, out-breath. And in-breath, out-breath is one of the very good objects for you to able to cool down the whole thinking. But this time, you're not really seeing how it changes. This time is all about shifting attention away from it and noticing other objects in order to bring the calmness in. It's another skillful way. But you are not seeing actually how it changed. So when you're noticing, for example, the thinking comes in, thinking, planning, then you gently bring it back to the in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath. Then go back again, planning, gently back again, in-breath, out-breath. Again, to and fro, to and fro, to and fro, to and fro, until your mind starts to settle into the in-breath and out-breath, and the thinking gets less and less. In-breath, out-breath has one of the very good quality because it really calms down the mind. But just enough for the mind to be calm and clear. Then after that, you go back to your rising and falling. When you go back to your rising and falling, you notice the rising and falling clearly, long, short, fast, and slow. So you begin to deal with it using a in-breath, out-breath to deal with this thinking mind. Or, if you do not want to use an in-breath, out-breath, you can use the rising and falling. Now when you pay attention to the rising and falling, this time, you don't pay attention whether it's long or short. It's more like a general mindfulness. Just let it breathe. Up, down, rise, fall. Planning, rise, fall, rise. Planning, rise, fall, rise, fall. Until the mind slowly coaxes it down, to cool the whole mind down into just the rise and fall. And when you can come back to the rise and fall again, just settle it for a while. Then after that, you pay a little bit more thorough attention to how the rising and falling is like long, short, fast, slow, and so on. This is a technique. Using the objects to calm the mind down. In fact, you can also use a sitting and touching also. The sitting and touching also is useful because this time, for example, thinking, planning again, you gently bring the mind back down to a touch point. Say when your hands are touching, then you note a few times, touching, and then thinking, planning, bring it down, touching. Same technique, different aspect of a different object. So with this different way, that if you feel which one is more comfortable to you, it's all about bringing the mindfulness and the tranquility in. When you're able to do that, then the mindfulness becomes stronger, the defilements become less, the hindrances become less, then you can able to carry on the other notings. So now you don't break it. Now you are just transforming all the objects into a meditation object. You just don't brush it aside, but you begin to see it as part of the whole vipassana practice. So alright, we'll stop here for tonight. Tomorrow we'll continue more on this topic. Alright.